7 lies you've been told about Chicago. Really enjoy checking out these American live videos. Before we do get into this, appreciate if you guys can hit that subscribe button and let's see what we got.
Hello, I've lived in the city of Chicago now for about 9 years, and recently it came to my attention that there are 1 or 2 myths that spread around the internet about this very city. From great fires to pizza, and sometimes fires as a result of making pizza in my case. So if you are the sort of American that likes hearing a foreigner talk about your country and you haven't yet subscribed to this channel, do that now.
Yes, sir.
In the meantime, let's talk Chicago myths.
Right. The big city.
Before I moved here, I had family members saying things like, Lawrence, be careful. This place where you're going to is an absolute war zone.
You know what? I hear that all the time. All the time I hear like Chicago, dangerous, dangerous, war zone, check out the dangers.
Never leave your house and make sure you don't talk to anybody. A few weeks living here, I realised they had a point. If you've ever tried cycling on the Lakeshore Trail in the heat of summer, you really have to watch out for fellow cyclists. But other than that, those warnings that came from family members as well as the media seem to be at odds with everything around me. There are vast expanses of this city that almost feel too calm for my liking. I need a bit of excitement.
I feel like when people say Chicago and Warzone, it's like America's a big place the way I see it now, right? I've seen, you know, the maps and stuff and like going in depth for like how big it is. Chicago's a big place as well. So like it's probably just it will be the bad areas in that. So yeah, you're probably not in the bad areas, but if you go to the bad areas, then it's a war zone, right?
Like certainly here, close to downtown and even downtown, everyone's really nice. But I have to say, I lived in Indianapolis for 3 years and I felt less safe there. And that's saying something because 95% of the time I felt fine there too. It's just it had small pockets that you had to avoid. And the same is true here. But even then, I've been to various parts of the south side and the west side. And
I wonder how it would feel like, for example, like let's say I moved to Chicago, because I live in Birmingham in the UK, and if you guys want to search it up, very dangerous, right? Like Birmingham City, and I'm like 20-25 minutes away from there. I don't feel safe going into my city. Not even in the slightest, bro.
Found those bits to be pleasant as well. So what I'm saying is, it's like any other city that I've ever lived in, including London. Yeah, you have some bad
London,
parts, but that small percentage should not cloud the fact that most of it is quite beautiful.
Yeah, gorgeous.
I think people get hung up on the so-called dangers of Chicago because of the raw numbers when it comes to crime. But you got to remember that this is a highly populated city. Yeah, of course the raw numbers of crime are going to be high, perhaps too high even for us. But if you break that down by per capita statistics, Chicago is not as high as people think. Let's look at some numbers. According to the most recent FBI data compilations, Chicago's homicide rate in 2024 was about 17.5 murders per 100,000 residents.
17.5 murders per every 100,000 residents. Hold up, I want to do some maths. I'm going to do it on the top of my head because I'm very intelligent. I want to try and find out how many is in my city so I can like do a good comparison. Birmingham, UK. What is the homicide rate per 100,000 people? Okay? I'm doing this in my head. I promise you I'm not doing it on my phone. Alright. Let's see. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. So it is a very, very big drop. In Birmingham, we have it saying here 13.6, 15.8 per million. Not 100,000. So it's about 1.52 per 100,000. Okay, very interesting.
Residents. For transparency, that's still above the national average. So clearly there's work to be done.
Okay,
that puts it behind more than 20 cities in the US in terms of per capita murder rate. Cities like Memphis.
Wait, what's number 1? Alabama? Hold up. Birmingham! What is it about Birmingham? Yo! Birmingham in the UK is very dangerous. Birmingham in America is literally number 1. We need to just get rid of the Birminghams.
Cities like Memphis, Tennessee, St. Louis, Missouri, and Birmingham, Alabama, where the rate is significantly higher.
58.9.
Secondly, when you look at violent crime overall, Chicago doesn't even make the top 90. That's on top of the fact that crime in Chicago has been falling. In 2025, homicides are on track to be the lowest in the city for more than a decade.
Oh, really?
As a YouTube sensation who has a house in Chicago, it could be easy to be paranoid about leaving it while I film. But I only say that because of how much our data ends up online.
Oh, okay,
right. In my description below. All that said, while this place is not the war zone that it's depicted to be, it did.
Yeah, it definitely don't look like a war zone. It looks, if this is a war zone, this is a war zone I'd like to be in. This is very beautiful.
Once looked like one.
Oh, it did look that
Particularly after the Great Chicago Fire of 1871. And when you live in this city, that is a historic event that you hear about time and time again.
Oh,
and there are two myths in particular that are associated with that fire that I want to discuss right here. The first of those is that it was started by a clumsy cow. It's one of those stories everyone thinks they know. In 1871, a cow belonging to a Mrs. O'Leary kicked...
Wait, are you telling me a cow burnt down the whole of Chicago?
Over a lantern, and poof, Chicago went up in flames. Except that it's probably nonsense. Yes, there was a Mrs. O'Leary, Catherine O'Leary, an Irish immigrant living on the city's southwest side.
Okay.
And yes, she owned a cow. And yes, the fire did start at her barn. But the official inquiry into the Great Chicago Fire never found proof that she, her husband, or the cow were culpable. In fact, the cow theory actually came from a newspaper reporter who later admitted he'd made it up because, quote, it made for a better story.
Hey, that's just the news in general, right? Listen, this is why I don't watch the news, man. This is why I don't watch the news. Mate, they're just out there trying to get the numbers high.
And in 1871, O'Leary herself was a convenient target. Anti-Irish prejudice was rampant in the United States, where the myth fit neatly into the stereotypes of the day. As for Daisy, or whatever her name was, she became Chicago's most infamous scape cow. However, in 1997, the Chicago City Council officially pardoned both Mrs. O'Leary and the cow, and to this day, the true cause of the fire has never been determined. So I hope that brings some closure to the cow's descent.
So it wasn't, that's the big lie. It was not the cow. Okay, it's for you guys in Chicago. Hey, we could calm down a little bit on the cow's family. You know what I mean? Don't hold any judgment.
And that they get fed extra grass this week. But before I moved here, I'd always heard that the Great Chicago Fire was so bad it decimated the entire city, which is kind of hard to do when much of the city is waterways. But the truth is, only about a third of the city burned down during that fire, and when you think about it...
Yo, a third of this whole city burning down is... that's a big fire.
A city of this size, that's still a lot. Now, granted, that third did include much of downtown, so the destruction looked catastrophic. But if you'd ventured to the south side or the far west side, you'd have still found plenty of Chicago standing, along with, presumably, a few confused cows wondering what all the fuss was about. But the fire was devastating, killing roughly 300 people and leaving 100,000 homeless. But Chicago didn't vanish.
Oh my, yo, that was bad. Jeez. Killed 300 people and 100,000 people homeless.
In fact, the city's rapid rebuilding became one of the great urban success stories of the 19th century. Within 2 decades, it was hosting the 1893 World's Fair, where, among other things, George Washington Gale Ferris unveiled a huge wheel bearing his name, the first of its kind in the world. Anyway, from great fires to
the Ferris wheel.
Let's talk pizza.
Oh, is that where the Ferris wheel comes from? It was George Washington Ferris. Oh, Chicago deep dish.
I think sometimes when I speak to people that don't live in Chicago, there might be this notion that we Chicagoans eat Chicago-style pizza all the time.
Right.
Indeed, when I first moved here, I lived just around the corner from a pizza shop that has since closed, from where initially, due to the novelty of the entire thing, we ordered Chicago-style pizza about once a day for a whole week. Ended up throwing up, you know, not because Chicago pizza is bad, but because it's so much.
Yeah.
Chicago-style pizza is deep dish pizza. I haven't looked it up, but I imagine it's quite a bit higher in calories than a New York style, for example.
Yeah, you probably don't want to look up the calories of that bad boy right there.
So over the years, just talking to Chicagoans about it, I get the impression that we view it as this thing that you have once in a while as a treat or for a special occasion. It's not something you're going to...
Hey, listen, I know there's a lot of people from Chicago that watch my videos. If you're watching this from Chicago, let me know. How often do you have a deep dish pizza? I guarantee there's going to be a few people in the comments saying, me every day.
Me every day, because you would probably die and spill all of the red tomato paste down here, which would make Chicago look like a war zone. I personally try it when A, I'm in the mood, or B, we have friends visit and they say, Lawrence, can we get Chicago style? All right, suppose you'll want to do the architectural tour as well. Of course, I really like to surprise those visitors by taking them to an area of Chicago they didn't think was possible. Come with me.
An area that isn't possible.
That is beaches. Now, I'll admit...
Oh, yeah. I always forget that Chicago has a massive coastline. Like, Chicago has the Great Lakes that literally look like oceans.
This one is a bit less of a myth and more of a surprise. Before I moved here, I didn't think that Chicago was the Miami of the Midwest, just without the sun. So at one point, Chicago not having a beach was a myth to me. But it turns out it doesn't just have
that don't look right, the beach next to the city like that. That's
one next to Lakeshore Drive, but countless
that
others
don't look right.
off the coast. Believe it or not, Chicago is home to 26 miles of shoreline and more than 24 beaches along Lake Michigan.
Look at that. That's actually, like, stunning, mate.
All with real sand, real lifeguards, and occasionally real seagulls stealing your chips. In true Chicago fashion, we didn't want to wait 4 million years for nature to give us a coastline, so we built our own. Starting in the late 1800s, the city extended its shoreline with landfill and concrete seawalls, and then dumped an astonishing amount of sand, much of which was brought in from Indiana, on top. The result? Some of the most striking urban beaches...
Oh, wait. What? This beach is man-made?
In the world, from Oak Street and from Indiana on top. The result? Some of the most striking urban beaches in the world, from Oak Street Beach, where I am in this video, to Montrose Beach, where dogs and hipsters coexist peacefully. Of course, this is Chicago, so beach season is roughly the length of a polite handshake. Anyway, I'm going to walk a few miles that way back to the other camera.
Nice.
Of course, on days like today, when it's quite windy out and you're experiencing fall weather, the beach is the last place that you want to be.
Of course.
And pound for pound, Chicago is a very windy city. But contrary to popular belief, that's not the only reason.
I love the design of the trains going above the roads. You don't see that in the UK. Right, it's just very, very, very American. And like, even right here, how you got the stairs going up on the side of the building, things like that just get me excited.
The name persists. It's true that it appeared in print for the first time in connection with the weather. However, the story in question pertained to a tornado rather than Chicago's general windy disposition.
Right, okay.
Instead, the nickname was popularized further in the 1890s, when Chicago was locked in a bitter rivalry with New York over who would host the 1893 World's Fair. New York journalists, ever the charmers, mocked Chicago's politicians as being windy or full of hot air for bragging about their city. The insult stuck, and soon the whole country was using it. Ironically, the so-called Windy City went on to win that bid, built the fairgrounds that became Jackson Park, and introduced the world to the Ferris wheel. Not bad for a place supposedly full of bluster. And so, despite what every tourist brochure and weather app might imply, the nickname has less to do with wind and more to do with ego. So there we have it. Chicago has a very confusing nickname. Actually, it has two.
What's the other one? Second City. Oh, what is this? Second City after New York City? Is that what it is?
Because shortly after I moved here, I discovered that Second City is not just a comedy troupe that basically gave us Saturday Night Live. That troupe was named after a 20th century nickname for this city. And I thought to myself, well, that's quirky, isn't it? And I also thought, being a curious person, why do we call it that? Well, initially, the name came down to population rankings. After the Great Fire, Chicago rose from the ashes, quite literally, and by the turn of the 20th century had become the nation's second most populous city behind New York. This led another New York journalist to coin the phrase Second City in 1952. Not as a compliment, of course, but as a jab, suggesting...
No, Chicago, though, from what I've seen, definitely looks like one of the city places I want to go to. I'm going to New York City in December, and then next year, I'm going to more rural America. I think I'm going to be going to Texas. But Chicago's definitely on the list.
Chicago was always playing catch-up with New York, but he was completely and utterly a little bit wrong, because we're actually now playing catch-up with Los Angeles, which exceeded our population in 1984.
Population-wise.
For in this sense, it is a myth to say we are the second city. Nonetheless, the term stuck, partly because of Chicago's expertise at taking an insult and turning it it into a badge of honor, but also because the name echoed the city's second incarnation, its rebirth after the Great Fire. Of course, for me personally, after living in the United States for 17 years, it is now my first city, and it's for that reason that I wanted to dispel some of those myths. Thanks for watching, and if you like...
Hey, cool video. Love checking out these videos where you just learn a lot more about America. Let me know what you guys think too in the comment section. If you guys enjoyed this one, make sure you give a thumbs up, subscribe for more content. I'll see you all in the next one. Peace.